Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Leadership Majlis, where we explore leadership journeys and strategies that shape industries across the Middle East. I'm your host Abhishek, and I'm thrilled to bring you meaningful conversations with leaders driving transformation through their organizations. Our goal is to uncover real leadership challenges, share actionable insights, and provide personal stories that resonate with professionals, especially C-level executives, navigating the unique business environment within the UAE and the wider Middle East. Our guest today is Mr. Nithin Shelley, who's a seasoned senior HR leader for one of the biggest retail brands in the UAE. With extensive experience in leadership and organizational transformation, Nithin is a driving force behind innovative HR strategies that align talent with business objectives. Nithin's journey is not only inspiring, but also rich with practical lessons on navigating challenges and creating impact in the ever-evolving retail and consumer goods space. Welcome, Nithin. Nithin drives HR for a very large retail conglomerate in the region. The best part about Nithin is that he's not been someone who's been in retail through and through.
Yeah.
He comes with a blend of experience of working with different industries, completely different geographies, and seeing, I would say, best of, I don't know how many geographies, or places I can, refer to, because he's worked in different industries and, grown through the ranks when it comes to being an HR leader. So, Nithin, firstly, thank you so much for, being here.
My pleasure, Abhishek. My pleasure.
I would love to, obviously understand how has your journey been when it comes to HR as a function, from where you started to where you are today. If you can share some light on that.
Okay. I started in Gurgaon in a company called GE Capital International Services, GECIS as it used to be called then. I used to be with their GE Healthcare division. So it was operations for the first about 4 years. And then through the much talked about internal job posting, I managed to get into HR. So the company was making an HR operations team. That's how I got my break into HR. So I am a third generation HR guy.
Okay.
Like my grandfather was.
Oh, amazing.
Then, it's more of the personal admin that used to be then. And my father was also in HR. So when I was willingly moving into HR, right? So my father discouraged me completely. Listen, you've got better things to do. Why do you want to, out of all the places, move into HR and all? So I put my case. So he said, okay, you want to take it a shot, but remember it's going to be a tough job. So I said, okay, we'll see. So that's where I started from. Got a lot of opportunities in Genpact, as it is now called, right? We made that transition. I think it was a lot of trust and capability that my supervisors saw probably. So they put me right into the fire many times. That's how I used to see it then.
Right.
But today when I look back, I think the opportunities that I got is what got me here.
Right.
So it started with China, then Romania, then Hungary, then Philippines, then US, and then finally to GCC.
Well, that's amazing, but having worked in so many countries, how is UAE different from the ones that you have obviously, worked in?
The difference is probably culturally more than people, right? Because as you travel across different countries and regions, that's how I see it maybe, but I don't see any big difference otherwise. Because obviously different countries you go have different cultures, you've got to get used to them and then start, handling and talking to people and liaising with it, and all of that. So it's not really too difficult. I like it here more because it's the melting point of so many cultures and nationalities. So not just at work, even outside, if you just go to socialize, it's a learning mind for you.
Well, that's interesting, Nithin. Very valid point. Dubai definitely is a melting pot of so many cultures. We all come from different walks of life, but I think there is something about the UAE that binds us all together. Uh, it brings me to my question where I wanted to ask you, being a seasoned senior HR leader for such a large enterprise within the retail sector, managing more than 7,000 employees, there are so many moving parts in the organization across so many functions. So, how difficult has it been for you to manage your role and be able to create value for the organization as their HR leader?
Experience has been good because till I was joining BMA, you're right. I had experience in banking, financial services, retail also, some part of it. But the front line was now with BMA. Right? So this is as I was being told when I was moving out of Genpact. They said, so one of my mentors told me, retail is detail, right? So and there is always a fire.
Yes.
Always a fire. Right? There are times when you'll feel like it's a stock market, right? Sale happening, not happening, why not happening? Let's do this for tomorrow. Let's do it for next week, next season. So it's a plus in a way also because there's always action. Something or the other is always happening, right? So I got to learn a lot because, plus there was the aspect of getting into a family-run business.
Yes.
Right, so that was different from where I was coming. But again, thanks to all the mentors and all that I had in the organization, they literally helped me to make sure that I am able to survive the storm.
I can imagine, and retail being one of the backbone, of the UAE economy in terms of the industries that really support the country.
Yeah.
It is so fast-paced and ever evolving. How has your role helped the organization to transform?
So there's a lot of the main objective when I was moving into the role was consolidation, standardization, process, making a lot of things process driven. So it was whole transformation transformation from the typical administrative or payroll driven HR into a lot of other strategic things like employee engagement, learning and development, and leadership development programs and all of that, right? Plus the consolidation of teams into one and the concept of shared services, building on it, and all of that. So those are the things which I think I was able to deliver on, right? So cost optimization is obviously another factor where people would generally see cost optimization as typically headcount reductions only. But that's not the start or end of the story, right?
Right.
There are better ways of achieving the final goal and all. So those are some keys which I think I've been able to contribute for the organization.
And having worked with both multinational firms and large family conglomerates, right? Cultural nuances is one, but obviously, working in an environment which can be either a black and white, but also a larger gray, where you have to be very sensitive in terms of stakeholder management.
Yeah.
How have you been able to cope up? Especially coming in from an MNC background and having now worked with a large family conglomerate, what are the challenges you've faced?
Quite a few. Setting up processes is obviously not the welcome thing everywhere, right? People tend to, most of the time, they want something done, but getting it done, accepting and going with it becomes difficult, right? So it had a lot to do with change management. Here in the current role, it had to do a lot with change management. Thankfully, with my previous experience, that was also a key. Like whenever I was a part of any acquisitions or anything such happening, it was all about change management, right? Getting people included in your organization. So you have to go through a lot of conversations, listening, primarily listening, right? So that people don't get the view, listen, don't teach us what to do. We know. right? So that you always start with listening, understanding, perspectives are important, and then you build on it further to see, okay, then you give your perspective, your side of the story, how you think it can be, and all of that. So that's been the big method for me, if I can call it so.
But your recipe for success, for helping you, reach where you are today, have there been figures or, important people, who we refer to as mentors, in your journey of, being in the Middle East? If you have, some, if you can give some examples.
Absolutely. I mean, not just in Middle East, throughout my career, I have been over blessed, if that's a word, but I call it out often, right? It's easy to just sit tight on your chairs and take credit for everything that's happening without realizing you do certain things a certain way because of the way you've been brought up professionally. Right? So there are quite a few. My list is long, so I don't want to take a few names and miss out a few. Right? But it all started with the gentleman called Rajat Kapoor. He was my first mentor in my absolutely initial days. Right, so him I give a lot of credit to, because with him I walked I climbed the first step of team management.
Right.
So going from an individual contributor to a team management, that part he helped me a lot. So, and then the blessings just continued.
I can imagine. And such a unique position that you're in when you directly work with promoters. What are the expectations that the owners of the organizations have from HR leaders in today's times? Like, if you can list out 3 key expectations, based on which an HR leader's performance is evaluated from the promoter.
I think number 1 will be, so it's the whole employee life cycle, right? That the importance of the life cycle has just increased as as the days have been, or as the years have been going by. Maybe a lot earlier years, it was more to do with body shopping. Right? You've got a position, just get somebody in here, fill up the position, move on. If the person leaves, you get another one. Now the emphasis on the whole process of getting the person on board, the life cycle within the organization, and even the separations of exit and all of that, each phase, the importance and the emphasis on each of those has changed a lot. So for me, if I look at my organization, this emphasis has grown very well, and for the right reasons also. There are times when obviously things get very transactional, right? And you tend to lose track of this. Then you're immediately brought back into the focus, right?
Yes.
So that's what has happened, and the good part is all of these get covered properly through reviews and all of that also. So as I was saying, retailers detail, right?
Yes.
So they would want to know about everything. The expectations are, listen, the employees should have a good journey for as long as they're in BMA. The emphasis on learning and development and all of that. So that's been the key.
Nithin, I wanted to ask you one more interesting question. We all talk about diversity, and I have noticed with many of our clients, most of our clients have been asking now in bringing in diversity for certain positions. They want more female leaders. They want people who come from different backgrounds, different experiences. When it comes to retail as a sector, how evolved is the space in terms of being open to bringing in people from different diversities, especially when it comes to value-based retailers?
They've come a long way, but they're still way ahead, right? Because if I look at it at the current times versus as it was probably 8 years back, some progressive steps that the government has taken in terms of maternity leaves, work from home, right, and things like these. I think a lot of these help manage your diverse population also very well.
Right.
Right? Because some things which might be Greek to you might be a part of the daily life for people coming from other cultures or nationalities and more evolved organizations. So things have changed, yes, for sure. But obviously, I mean, slowly and slowly, as I hear of a lot of other changes also happening, it'll only improve further. Now, the important part is for organizations to adopt and adapt to these changes. You can either choose to change or be left out.
Yeah.
Right? So the faster this happens from an organization standpoint, it's better.
Interesting. So what are 3 key challenges you face right now, Nithin, in your role as an HR leader?
I think leadership development is an important aspect. That's what's always a hotcake, not just for senior leadership, but even for the middle management, right? Because one key objective or one key way to retain talent is by making sure that the people within the organization have enough growth opportunities. Right? So then this whole talent management and development piece is what I think a
But
big.
Nithin, in your experience as an HR leader, I'm sure you do so many interviews, especially when it comes to C-level leaders. Could you give me examples of certain mistakes or let's say errors people make while they're interviewing for these senior positions at senior levels?
So it's got a little bit of perspective here. Okay,
Right.
The way I see it, if you want to hire a profile, this is the right place to be.
Yes.
Purely because of the diversity.
Yeah.
Right? The amount of the kind of diverse profiles that you come across, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
You go through a resume or you meet somebody in some social gathering or something, and there are times when I'm just stuck saying, interesting, good, I should know more about the person, and then you tend to dive in more, get to know more and all of that. So I don't think from a talent pool standpoint, there's a problem here. There's enough and more, right? Really enough and more. The catch becomes when you talk about fitment. Fitment in terms of organization cultures. And there's nothing wrong or right about it because obviously everybody goes through their own cycle of change and evolution and all of that, right? But then finding the right person, number one, who you think will be the fit for the role is important. And after that comes the hand-holding part. The first 6 months are difficult.
Right.
Absolutely difficult. Right? And you as a hiring or the person who's bringing talent into the company, you're morally more obliged to making sure that that individual gets his or her time to settle in. Right? So that is very important. That hand-holding is extremely important.
And in your line of work, obviously you interview so many people, and especially at senior levels, C-suite roles. What do you think are the mistakes people make, when they come in and meet you, or let's say the promoters, where their profile matches the role, but they don't end up getting the job. I'm sure every organization has their own way of looking at candidates, but there must be some common mistakes people make. Which kind of ends up in they not getting the role.
So something that I often tell people who do not get through, not just within my organization, even outside, when people ask me the question of I prepared so well, I was so ready, then why do you think I did not get the job? Well, there are times when we lose the game in our push to fit yourself into the organization, even before you've actually got selected also. Right? So what I mean is, a lot of people come and they sit down for the interview, they try and tell, or they try a lot to sell themselves to the company by, through examples, telling them that, listen, I do this, I do that. Yeah, I understand. I've come across so many. Yeah. When in reality, even you would know that those are things you might not have done to the real sense, right?
Right.
And somewhere or the other in the selection process, it comes out. I mean, the people who are interviewing also weren't like born yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. But in this, in putting on this mask and carrying the mask, they lose the game. And then they think.
Nithin, as compared to other industries, when I look at retail has not been very progressive when it comes to technology as a function. And I'm sure you will agree, when we all were in the crisis of COVID, most of the retailers had to overhaul their entire tech strategy overnight, where people were not coming into the malls or shops to buy. Everybody wanted to look at bringing in e-commerce. I'm sure as an HR leader, you also would have been in midst of this issue. Could you, share your thoughts with me on what role you played in transforming the organization at that time, in keeping the organization ready technologically?
So for me, the biggest enabler that HR becomes in this opportunity is to help adapt, make people understand from a culture standpoint, getting both the parties acquainted to what the other party, or how the other party runs the show. So when I say both the parties, I mean people who are tech savvy, bringing in the technology and all of that side, and the people who are implementing or adopting, going to adopt and all. So it's important that there is a bridge between two sides. If that doesn't exist, I don't think any technology will be able to succeed in a company. It's like an adoption, right? I mean, when you think about adoption,
right,
there's a lot of difference between a child being born of you and you going and adopting someone.
Right.
So if the bridge doesn't exist, then you can't blame either party.
Right.
The parent might not be ready, and the one coming into the family also might not be ready.
Right.
That's, I think, a very critical role for HR to play.
Nithin, there are many leaders who stay in the same sector throughout their life. And then there are some who are like you, who are always open to trying new industries. I have seen in your career, you've had experience in so many different industries. Now, when you come into a new industry as an HR leader and you've never worked in that sector before, as an HR leader, have you personally experienced certain challenges in being able to, create value in that job initially?
So a little, again, maybe a perspective.
Yeah.
Industry, the way I see it, for me, has always been people. Retail, banking, insurance, automobile, etc. All of those come later. And if I start seeing at roles like that, then it's the same industry for me also. I've been stuck with HR or human capital, or as we call it now. So, the core remains the same. The people is the core. What they do is the secondary point. Because this is something that my dad also used to tell me. So he used to say, for you to know your job and do your job well, it's important to know what your people are doing.
Nice.
Right?
That's a very interesting thought.
But then you've got to remember that it's people. The core there doesn't change. The drivers there doesn't change. For example, self-respect, right? Everybody will have it. Doesn't matter what geography, what industry, that core remains in every single individual across the level. Right from the bottom of rank and files to all the way to the chairman or CEO or whoever, this one component stays.
Right.
So similarly, there are a few others also.
There are a lot of people who are not in the UAE, but they always aspire to come here and work, right? We are grateful, blessed to be part of the UAE, which is one of the most fastest growing regions in the world, right? And time and again, when I'm speaking to candidates or clients, people who are outside, especially candidates, they've always complained that, we've not been able to get a break, when it comes to Middle East, when it comes to a job search. From your experience and having years of experience as an HR leader and having hired so many people, what would be your advice to them, to be able to find some success in successfully finding their next job in the Middle East?
The advice will be something that I have realized through the opportunities that came my way, which is there is a right time and right place for everything. Truly there is. This is not, usually people will take on the route of, oh, here it goes again. No, it's not just about, it's not something that, that I say for the sake of it or for a gyan, as we call it, from that standpoint. No, it doesn't. It's not that. It really is. If you think about it, forget about what you want to do. Right? Even senior HR leaders, what they want to do. If you just look back at your journey and look at all the changes that have come by, I'm sure everything's happened when it happened for a reason. Right? So you have to be, one, patient about that reason. And second, you have to be a little more prepared from a regional standpoint also.
Right.
So, like I said earlier, the core remains people, correct. So it's the cultures which drive how they behave, how they are, and a lot of that. That's true. But then you cannot have the same brush to paint everybody.
Right.
What might have worked in US might not work in India. What might have worked in India might not work in Romania. Likewise, China. And for that matter, in UAE, it could be different. Bahrain will be different. Oman will be different. So you have to be open to that also and, understand, study about it a little bit more.
But, apart from just applying to jobs on LinkedIn or, reaching out to executive search consultants, are there any other ways, people can kind of still come in the eyes and, of decision makers when it comes to a job search in the Middle East? Like, have you come across any unique experiences of candidates who have reached out to you in an out-of-box, way, which caught your attention and you gave that person a chance?
It has happened, but it has happened when it was a unintended, when getting a job in the Middle East wasn't the other person's requirement. That's how it has happened. Because, as I was saying, when people start meeting people with the objective of, I have to get into this country, it becomes desperate at times. Right? So then you tend to do things which are not required.
Right.
Which starts with not being yourself.
Right.
Right? So it has happened, you're right. But then it's just happened with no intention of either party to.
All right. And what do you personally do, when especially at the level that you're at and the stakeholders that you deal with, everybody is obviously, producing results for the owners, right? And they are managing such important portfolios and important roles in the organization. And sometimes these leaders have their own way of, getting things done and doing things, which may not complement, let's say, their teams or, other stakeholders in the organization. And that just puts the HR leader in a fix, in terms of who should I keep happy, right? How have you, handled those situations and managed people while ensuring the ecosystem still runs seamlessly without any friction?
So two principles or practices or however you want to call it. One, pick your battle. Extremely important.
Right.
Extremely important. You don't have to fight all the battles. It's okay to let go of some things at times. Second, so this is again a philosophy that I learned. So my dad used to tell me, he says, look at, have you noticed how a woodpecker is? So I said, yeah, I have. So he says, carefully watch what the bird does. It just doesn't give up. It slowly, steadily, it will achieve the goal of building that nest. It's not easy to break into a tree with your beak out of all, right? But that persistence, that is very important. If you truly believe in something, at least give it that persistence, and give it your best. If it still doesn't happen, go back to the first principle of picking your battle.
Middle East, the interesting part about this region is that about almost 75 to 80% of the organizations are controlled by family groups, right? Yes, there are multinationals, but the larger ambit of, I would say the corporate world here is run by families. And there are a lot of C-level executives who kind of look at moving to this part of the world. What are the expectations, which typically a promoter would have from C-level, executives who are, forming part of their core team? I understand be very role specific, function specific, but in terms of their attitude, especially Middle East being Middle East, things happen very fast here, right? So what does an owner or a promoter look from a C-level executive for that C-level executive to be successful while working in a promoter-driven environment?
So I was extremely lucky because this requirement was conveyed to me straight off in the first meeting with the boss who owns the company.
Right.
He said, take your time and understand what happens here and why it happens. We are in no rush for you to prove anything. Right? So invest in traveling around, knowing people, getting to know them, who's done what. I mean, there were people who've been with the organization for like 20, 30 years. Obviously, something's working fine, right? Otherwise, why would this is not a jail that people would be stuck to. So try and get that perspective, try and understand that, and then we'll talk.
Right.
Now, there is a lesson in what I just said for both sides of the table. For the owners, they have to be okay doing this or giving the space and time to the executive who's joining.
Right.
They have to tell them that you don't have to prove anything.
Right.
Now, the person who's joining also needs to understand you don't have to prove anything. You got hired because they saw something in you, right? So don't be in that rush to make an impact in like major. I saved top dollars and this is what I bring to the table. And if the joining person feels that the company doesn't operate like that, they need results fast and all, then at least have a conversation so that the expectations are managed pretty well, rather than just keeping quiet.
Right.
And one fine day figuring out that why did I get the pink slip?
No, that's a valid point. And when it comes to retail, as an industry here, there are so many companies, both, like I said, family-driven organizations and multinationals here. And you would have obviously interacted with so many people from the space. What do you think would be the challenges the industry is facing right now, with respect to the best practices? Because, there is talent coming from different parts of the world into retail here. They already have a certain set expectation, which they are used to. And when they come here, obviously it can be sometimes a culture shock as well, right? So what do you think would be the, the bottlenecks or the challenges, or things, which companies or not, in retail are not doing here?
So, again, I'd like to give both the sides of what's the challenge that happens. For the people who come here, when it comes to the culture, this is out of my own experience, I say that the only way to handle culture is to respect it and never be judgmental about it. Because that's the biggest mistake you can make. So that's for the people who are coming in, right? If they want to take help, if they want to talk to somebody, they can find out the right people and have that conversation. From an organization standpoint, the challenge is there are a lot of things that you will have to manage when you're changing at probably 100 miles an hour. Right? You will have to understand that you are changing at that speed. There will be some balls which will be dropped. There will be some which you will be able to run through.
Right.
So you will have to again pick and choose. You can't have everything in that one platter that talent is bringing from the rest of the world.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that's happening internally also, and which you also can't change overnight.
Right.
Be it technology, be it practices, be it people, be it processes, everything, right? So you have to give it time. And the organization also should not be judgmental about people who are coming, and, who are starting their journey with you.
Right.
Nobody will gain.
Yes.
Neither side will gain.
Right.
You lose the talent will lose an opportunity, you will be stuck, or okay, you're a big company, maybe you still grow, maybe a little slower.
And there's a big debate always going on a topic which has been stretched too much now, which is, having work from home, work from office, hybrid, and obviously it's very industry specific. What is your thought on that, Nithin? What works best?
I have been a promoter of work from home. But I have been a detractor of work from home when it starts getting exploited. Okay, now it is not exploited from either side. From the company also, right? I mean, from the company, I'm saying you push the person into a work from home and then categorize the person as disengaged.
Right.
Pass a judgment on the individual, and then the person gets fired. That's wrong from the organization. Now, from the person who is working from home, you can't take that benefit for granted if it comes as a benefit, unless, as you said, role specific. There are some roles which don't need you to be at your desk and doing.
Right.
Right. So if it comes as a benefit, then use it as a benefit.
Yes.
Not as an entitlement, and not beat the hell out of, I'm working from home, so I can do anything and all that. No. Right. So fundamentally, I've always been a promoter of work from home. But if somebody was to tell me that, would you be open to working from home, let's say 2 days in a week, I'd say no.
And why would you say that?
Maybe because of the role, because what one thought that goes on in my mind is that's my office time.
Yes.
Right? And in my role, I don't know who's going to turn up to talk to me in that time. And that's also about a moment, right? Abhishek might want to talk to Nithin now. So he'll go looking for him. If he's in office but not there, that's still okay. But if he's just not in office for today, then when Abhishek goes back home, he'll see like, yeah, you know what, just let it go. So I don't want to lose that opportunity. You can call it FOMO in a way, but then I'd rather be in office.
In retailer sector, there is a front office and there's a back office in terms of the people that work within the organization.
Yeah.
And front office is especially quite large.
Yeah.
Right. These are your store managers, sales assistants in the stores.
Yeah.
And it's, the attrition is quite high in that space. What are the measures that you are taking to retain your front house or front of the office staff, right? Are there things that you're doing differently which has really helped you in being able to, keep them retained? Because at that level, people will also leave for 100 or 200 dirhams, increase, right? So, what's your thought on that?
I think it's important to know what will they stay for instead of focusing on what will they leave for.
Right.
There could be 10 reasons of what could they leave for, and each could be important for an individual in a way which you might not understand. What people stay for is one, a career path and some transparency. Right? Those are two, and the third, which is probably as per researchers and researchers the most important, they stay back for their bosses. Right? So if you focus on these three components, I think retention becomes a little more easier.
Amazing. I think a lot of questions on the professional end. Let me touch a little bit on how things are personally. You seem to be obviously someone who's knowing you, very family oriented, individual, and I think that's where you derive a lot of energy from to do what you do. But how do you balance your life? Because the position that you're in, it's quite demanding, right? But how do you try to give equal time to your work as well as to your family?
I don't have a problem staring at my wife on Sundays. Right. So since that's the hot topic, I thought
wife will be very happy.
I thought let me just put it out there first. Right? I'm not that league. But having said that, there are some rules that I try and live up to, and I have to give the credit to my wife for waking me up to those rules every now and then. So she's like the sanitizer for the work-life balance, and in times and ways even I am for her. At least I'd like to believe that, right? So small things like you've got to end office as per a time.
Right.
Everything is urgent. Is not possible. That's just not possible.
Right.
There are things which will be really urgent, have to be handled like those. Right? And when you come back home, you really have to try to detach.
Right.
I have been blessed, for this matter, that bosses have been supportive of this one thing because they understand this is the way I am, and you've got to deliver. If it's not happening today, tomorrow morning you can come and deliver. But if something has to be done like now, then you're done.
Right.
Then once you're home, so there'd probably be 30 minutes to 1 hour that you will get with your children.
Yes.
That time has to happen.
Yes.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, right?
I can imagine.
Many times I have failed. It becomes even more difficult for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Because I am in a job. I can switch off. If I say I'm leaving office at 6 o'clock, I can switch off. But that's not how it works for an entrepreneur. It's a ever-running clock.
It's
the only time, right, and you would understand it also, right?
Yes.
The only time you're not working is when you're sleeping.
Yes.
There are times when even then you're working.
Yes.
Your mind is working.
Right.
So it is a difficult balance, really difficult balance. But as long as you've tried and you're honest to yourself,
amazing.
That's fine.
Nithin, it's been absolute pleasure having you on the Leadership Majlis. I'm sure our listeners will take a lot of valuable lessons from this podcast. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, share your feedback, and connect with us on LinkedIn for more inspiring stories from industry leaders. See you next time.